Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Laurent Heller, Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration here at UW-Madison. This is the first of two employee forums that we'll be doing, focusing on staff issues related to the campus's Smart Restart plan. We've done several others of these town halls, focusing on instructional issues, research issues, things of that nature. Those are all recorded. You can find them on our Smart Restart website. This event will also be recorded and shared on that website afterwards. It's also worth noting that we're pleased to offer closed captioning services, sign language, and translation services. If you look in the links down below on your screen, you can find those if you need them. I'm pleased to be joined today by an august panel of folks who are going to help us try and answer your most important questions about our plans. Chancellor Rebecca Blank, Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Lori Reeser, Mark Walters from the Office of Human Resources, Alan Fish from Facilities Planning and Management, and Jake Baggett from University Health Services. We also have a team of people working to staff our email inbox, and we'll be taking questions live during the event. That email address is smartrestart@vc.wisc.edu. You can see it there on your screen. Please feel free to send those questions in. We'll do our best to answer them here live today. Obviously, we will not be able to get to all of them, so look for us to post an FAQ or possibly even respond directly during the event. If it's a question that our excellent team of folks have an easy answer to, we'll just try and get it back to you right away if we're not able to speak to it live on the video. Okay, so I'll also note some of the questions we've picked out here at the beginning are some of the trickiest ones, some of the ones we've heard most from our colleagues in shared governance and coming in on our employee survey. That employee survey went out on Friday last week, and it's still open and available through tomorrow, Friday. So if you have not yet answered that, please do. We're going to use the information coming in there both to inform our communications and new updates to our website and the like, and also make sure that we're thinking about everything. You folks are very smart. You're asking good questions. We appreciate that. We appreciate the dialogue. So let's get it kicked off. I'm going to hand it over to Chancellor Blank for some intro comments. Chancellor.
Thank you, Laurent, and thanks to everyone for joining us at noon today. We're in a really unique world, and it's a world that none of us have seen before. A lot of things are different, including how we're doing business at the university, both in research and in education. There's a lot of adaptation needed, and I know that new guidance is coming out almost daily, and some of that guidance is very complex. For instance, our guidance on different leave options, because we have such a broad group of faculty with very different situations, it's a long document, and you sort of have to look through it to find the things that are appropriate for you. If you put the changes that we're going through here at the university and all of you within work on top of what's happening in all of our families, with kids at home, some of you have worries about elderly parents, some of you yourself have health issues, or your spouse has health issues. There's just high degrees of anxiety everywhere. And that makes everyone respond with a little more emotion, a little more anger, a little less dispassion. I've heard that. I'm sure many of you have heard it. And I will say we're all in this together, and we're going to have to figure out our way through. The changes are just a lot to take in. All of us long to be back to the world that we were in before, and that's not going to happen real soon. So we wanted to create this opportunity to give you a sense of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the guidance we're trying to put out, particularly for some of the main questions that we keep hearing. But I will say new knowledge keeps coming in. The science keeps evolving about the virus and the best way to protect ourselves against it. The result is we don't always have all the details and all the answers. We're evolving our answers as we learn more and trying to track the science as smartly as we can. As much as we have that we know is up on the Smart Restart website that is updated regularly. We're sending out regular weekly updates to many people. We're trying to hold town hall meetings, and I encourage all of you to go to that website on a regular basis. There's a lot there. It takes a bit to get through it sometimes and find exactly what you want, but much of what you want will be there. And if you don't find it, send an email. That's also clear how you do that, and let us answer your question. our commitment to be as open and honest about what we've done, why we're doing it as we can. I will say that we have moved really quickly. It was only 5 months ago that we went into this, and we pulled down a whole university and are now in the process of reopening it. And anyone who tells me that universities can't be nimble and can't change, my reaction is, that's just nonsense. Look at what we've done in the last several months and all the change that we've dealt with. And I appreciate the resilience and the flexibility and the commitment that I know all of our staff, faculty, and students have shown. It is really imperative that we keep our research operating, and it's why we tried to start back up with research. We closed much of it down in March with only some of our most essential research, particularly that relating to infectious diseases, continuing. We are slowly reopening labs. It doesn't look the way it did before. Places are more distanced. There are fewer people in labs. There's more work going on virtually where that can happen. But it is really important that we get our research back. It is people's careers. It is really important work that's being done. And we're really quite committed to that. The provost and I also feel very strongly that it is important that we do some in-person teaching, if at all possible, which is why we're bringing students back. About a little over a third of our classes, I think 36% of our classes will be in person. The large classes are all online. Some of those classes simply, you can't teach them very well, except in person. But in some cases, we all know that the value of in-person learning is different. The interactions between people in a room together are different than the interactions between people on videos. That's actually a pretty well documented and researched issue. Plus, we know that a lot of the student experience at UW is not just classroom experience. It's meeting people who you've never met before with experiences really different than your own. Now, there's going to be less student organizations. There's going to be, almost no big events on campus. There will be less of that, but students will still, in the classroom and in smaller groups, be butting up against each other and holding those late night discussions that are such an important part of figuring out who you are and where you're going. Finally, I would note that a very high share of our students are going to be in Madison, whether we are online or not online. All of our graduate students are here. And, a good share, we estimate, 60 to 70% of our undergraduates, come to Madison. They don't want to be in their bedroom, in their parents' basement. And they are taking their housing contracts and will be here. And it will be safer for them to be here in a much more controlled environment where we are messaging them daily about health protocols, where they, have regular testing available if they want to take access to it, than elsewhere. And we're particularly, of course, concerned about the dorms where we really have a lot of health protocols in place. So what is the fall going to look like? Widely available COVID testing and targeted testing for some groups, such as those in the dorms. We've already opened our first on-campus testing site. You'll hear more about that in a minute. Universal mask wearing required. All classrooms, all indoor spaces, and any place else where you can't physically distance. Physical distancing in classrooms and in offices. All sorts of new health protocols and cleaning protocols, including measures to reduce campus density. We're going online after Thanksgiving, so everyone doesn't go home and then come back after going all over the country. And we think that's important. The last 2 weeks of the semester will be online only. We will have a public dashboard of what's happening in terms of COVID cases on campus, since many of them will be tested on campus. We'll have that information. And we'll be marketing regularly. All of you are going to see a lot more than you want if you come to campus in terms of email messages and posters and signs and other things talking about the health protocols you need to do. There's a huge team of people who've made this possible, and I can't begin to thank all of them for the enormous work of people who've just been working long hours and intensely to get to where we are. And I know many of you have been doing that as well in circumstances that aren't easy, given everything else going on in your family. So let me close by just saying thank you for your commitment and your involvement and all of the work that you do here at UW. Let me turn it back to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chancellor. And yeah, I just want to echo that too, and say my sincere and heartfelt thanks to our university staff and academic staff colleagues, faculty and others here in this campus community who have worked tirelessly in unbelievably trying circumstances these past 5 months. amidst uncertainty, amidst very difficult conditions. But we have kept this campus operating. We've kept our mission moving forward of research, teaching, and public service. I want to talk a little bit more about that employee survey. So 7,157 responses we had to that as of last night, about a 30% response rate. Obviously, we're still collecting that. We're going to keep analyzing it and taking a look at it. So far, about 1,300 of the folks who had responded are already working on campus. Most of them are already working on campus for that entire 5-month period. In fact, keeping things going, we thank them for their service. About 1,000 folks have been notified that they would be returning to campus, and the bulk of the remainder would not and would be continuing to telecommute. Obviously, we're making these decisions carefully about what we're bringing back in close consultation with Public Health Madison-Dane County and our own campus experts on how to do this in the safest way possible. One key thing is PPE. We know that. If you're in your office alone with the door closed, which I currently am, you do not need to wear a mask. Otherwise, if you're indoors, you do need to wear a mask. And we'll be providing PPE, whether that's masks, hand sanitizer, face shields, gloves, things like that for free all over campus. We don't want money to be an impediment, obviously, in this situation. Communicating about these health protocols and what to do, making sure we're all reminded over and over again about how to stay safe in this environment will be a key thing. I think maybe that's a good segue for me to hand it over to Jake Baggett at University Health Services, who's going to talk to us a bit about health and safety.
Thank you, Laurent. I appreciate the information you're sharing, and just want to echo my appreciation for really the incredible amount of work that's been going on. And as Laurent and the Chancellor referred to, the health protocols that we have in place are effective. We're very fortunate to be in Madison-Dane County, supported by that public health department, where we work very, very closely with in terms of our strategies. So what's really important beyond having those protocols in place, which are having an effect, we know that locally that the positive testing rates have really returned down from a significant surge over the summer. Locally, we're averaging about 1.5% here positivity rate, which is much better than many other places in the country. And so we think that those things are making a difference, which is why we've adopted those here on our own campus. So in order to support that as well, we also make sure that we have testing available. So we open up our first on-campus testing site here this last week here at the Henry Mall area. So that's available to you now. It's available for free and no limitation on the number of tests that you might receive for that. So we just want to make sure it's as accessible as possible for you. There's no charge, and we will be adding additional testing sites in the coming weeks. So look for more information around that as well. There's layers of testing strategies that are in place and being launched in preparation for the fall, including a very comprehensive residence hall testing strategy that will include testing all residents in our own campus dorms as they arrive on campus, and testing them every 2 weeks throughout the balance of their time here. That will help us manage those students, identify cases early, and support them in isolation and quarantine spaces, which we've already pre-planned and are prepared to support. In addition to that, there's an off-campus cohort of students in the community that will be testing on a regular basis as well, to also monitor the prevalence of that within the community. And then one other cohort of testing strategy is really focused on our faculty and staff. So many of you may get an invitation to participate in that as a part of a way to surveil what the prevalence of COVID is in our community. These are all layers of strategies that will help us manage and respond to conditions as they change, and make sure that we're focusing the right protocols in the right ways. Testing results, if you receive your tests here on campus, which I would expect many of you would do, we're going to get those test results back quickly. We've already been doing that through local testing. As the campus becomes back into full operation, we will actually be opening a campus lab that will actually improve our ability to respond to that. So in most cases, you're going to hear the result of those tests within 24 hours. And then in addition to that, we have a staff of trained contact tracers that are working in collaboration with Public Health Madison Dane County to make sure that we can identify those who may have been considered a close contact and help support them as well. So we have a really robust strategy. We could talk about that at length. There's a lot of information on the Smart Restart page, and look for additional information as we move forward. I'm going to turn it over to the next speaker.
Cool. All right. Well, next up, I think we have Mark Walters from the Office of Human Resources.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I also want to thank the campus community for all the things that have been going on over the last number of months. I've been on campus for a number of years, and I've been so proud of how everyone has come together to figure out all the things that we need to do with the activities that occurred in the spring, and now with the reopening of campus for the fall semester. So thank you. I'm proud to be a Badger to see all these great things that are going on to support the community. Lauren had talked about the employee survey that was kicked off last week, and really putting that in the field so we can collect feedback on how we can support our faculty and staff, the information that we've already provided to the campus community through the Smart Restart program, as well as getting input on how we can enhance those resources. So Lauren had mentioned we have over 7,000 responses, and that within those responses, we had 87% of individuals indicate that they have reviewed the Smart Start resources, and that 81% said they were very helpful for them as they're navigating either being on campus or are going to be returning to campus. Some good information is coming. We hope to get more responses over the next day and a half or so. Tomorrow is the deadline. Some of the top 5 themes that we received through that survey, as far as how we can provide support for our employees, include a need for clear public health protocols for faculty and staff. Also, ensuring coworkers follow those public health protocols, and really ensuring that there's accountability to follow those public health protocols as a community. Also, providing flexibility. If an individual or an employee cannot work on campus because of the COVID pandemic, providing flexibility to address that. Also in the flexibility area, how do we address the childcare issues? As we know, many of our K through 12 schools in the area have gone virtual, and how do we help employees address that? And then the 5th area is providing clear communications from leaders. And so those are the initial themes that have been coming through with the survey. A lot of comments coming in that we're analyzing to see the areas that we need to provide enhancement to our resources. And we do plan on summarizing the survey information that's collected and sharing with our stakeholders in the future. So I wanted to mention that. So if you haven't had a chance to fill out that survey, I encourage you to do that. Certainly the things that are coming through at discussions like this, town halls and forums, we're collecting all that information to further enhance our strategies. One of the areas I want to talk about, it's a primary area, our philosophy about providing flexibility to employees. That we are stressing that we really need to look at each individual employee's circumstance and figure out a strategy to help them not only meet their professional needs and as far as their role on campus, but also their personal needs, whether it be childcare, whether it be an issue a medical issue where the COVID virus definitely is a concern. And so really sitting down one-on-one with employees and figuring out those strategies, working with their employees, working with their supervisor, working with the HR community, along with the division disability representatives to customize plans of how we can help provide the flexibility and for the needs of our employees. We certainly need to balance that with flexibilities and making sure that we are accomplishing the campus activities for all the roles that employees perform. So wanted to talk about that. We're going to be talking more about these areas later on in the forum. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Alan Fish to talk about the facilities and planning area.
Thanks, Mark. I look forward to sharing some information with all of you as you prepare to come back to campus. Our main strategy for the coronavirus is really a prevention strategy, and it's multiple layers. The importance of this is that there is no silver bullet right now for dealing with this virus, but by putting together multiple layers, we'll be able to try and put as big a blanket of prevention as we can as we operate campus. So I'm going to mention some of the things we're working on right now. First of all, we're going to do a lot different cleaning that we have in the past. In order to have more daily cleaning, we're going to bring our custodians back for a full campus-wide cleaning of high-touch areas between 10 and 2 o'clock every day, in addition to a full cleaning that we do overnight as we have in the past. In order to be able to reallocate our custodians to do that, we are asking you to help us, and that is by taking out your own trash and recycling from your offices as you come back to campus. Your custodian and building manager will locate a place for you to take your trash and recycling on every floor, on every building and campus. And that will allow us both to keep fewer people in your area and then also be able to reallocate to cleaning in those high touch areas across campus. Campus is going to have a lot fewer people. We're not going to have many of the large classes. The periods of flow with class changes will be different than the past. So we're really encouraging people to think in a communal way about how we operate on campus. Wear your mask practically all the time. Spread out, keep moving, reduce congestion. We'll be putting hand sanitizers out in general areas of buildings. We'll be limiting the amount of people that can go into elevators, and we can talk more about that as we move forward. We've also made some changes in how we're handling air quality within the buildings. All of our buildings will maximize as much outside air as we can, so we'll be tuning up our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. And then also we're going to extend the run of those systems. Normally we turn them down right away at the end of the day in order to save energy. Now we'll run them well into the evening, and we'll start them up early in the morning, well before people come, in order to maximize our airflow. We're also changing the way we handle transportation. Parking is going to be much more flexible this year. Many of you have already applied for your base lot or flex parking, and frankly, lots of people have signed up for flex parking this year. If you're parking 3 days or less a week, that is a good alternative. You'll save some money, and you'll give us more capacity for parking other people on campus. Right now, we have about 60 or 70% of the amount of base lots that have been signed up as we have in the past, but more than double flex parking. In addition to that, you'll be able to buy for $40 a 5-pass parking for daily parking that you'll be able to use in any lot on campus. And then finally, we continue to be flexible in that if you change your situation where you have a base lot permit and you really feel like you need to go to a flex parking, you'll be able to apply for that every 2 weeks throughout the year, and vice versa. If you have flex parking and you find you now have to come back more regularly to campus, you can apply for a base lot. We'll have fewer visitor parking spaces this year, and we'll maximize our flexibility to keep you moving. And then finally, from a bus standpoint, we're working closely with Madison Metro, who has limited capacity on buses to around 25 at the current status to keep space on buses. They're cleaning them regularly. We'll begin full bus service on campus on August 23rd. And when that begins, we'll also have smaller capacity. If we have higher demands, we'll start adding buses so that we can keep moving on campus. And Madison Metro is doing the same thing for those of you who use buses to get to and from work. So all of these things are layered up to try and prevent the transmission of the virus in how we operate buildings and how we get you to and from campus. There are many elements of this. We put together a detailed facility startup guide. It's on the Smart Restart website. It's also on our FP&M website. It's an easy, clickable area. So if you see something that you want more information on, you'll be able to dive right into it and then click to it. So I encourage you to take a look at that before you come back to campus. and we're happy to answer your questions and look forward to working with you here.
Okay.
Back to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Alan. Let's move to Vice Chancellor Lori Reeser at this point.
Great. Thanks, Lauren.
Sure.
I also want to add my appreciation to all of our staff, especially for all the dedication and really truly the innovation that's happened over the last 5 months. We couldn't have done this work without you, and we're just so grateful for how dedicated and committed you all are. I just want to highlight a few efforts as related to students, because that's an important population, obviously, that we all serve, and to share some of that information too. The first one is related to education. All students will be required to go through a COVID educational program, a video program, and at the end of that, there will be what's called a Badger Pledge, and we're asking that all students virtually sign that Badger Pledge, which indicates their commitment to following all the public health guidelines that we've set up for them. We've also been providing a lot of information and doing a number of these town halls and presentations to students, to families, especially for our new students, to really provide clear expectations for what the fall is going to look like, what our expectations are of those students, and what their experience will be like this fall, because we know it's not going to be the same, but we're committed to providing as high quality and safe services for our students as possible. The second area is just in terms of overall support for our students. We know this is a really stressful time for everybody. The chancellor alluded to that. So we know stress and anxiety is going to even be higher for our students. And so our mental health services staff will be available, providing their normal high quality counseling support for our students. Much of that will be offered on a virtual basis, but we know sometimes that virtual opportunity won't be enough for students. So also providing some in-person space for students as well as we're really trying to think of spaces where students can go to have some of those confidential and personal conversations, because if they're in a residence hall with a roommate, then that might be a limited time or limited space for them to do that. So we really want all of us to be thoughtful on how we can help our entire community manage the stress and anxiety that's out there. As always, the Dean of Students Office has a link for students of concern. And so we did a great job of this in the spring, especially of our faculty and staff that are worried about students who haven't shown up for class or who may be exhibiting additional stress or worry that we need to do some follow-up for. So that will continue to be available and enhanced. We're very concerned and being thoughtful about our support for underrepresented students and international students. We know that it's been a really difficult summer and especially ongoing racial injustice that exists in our country. And we know that this virus has had additional impact on communities of color. So being thoughtful about how we can support our underrepresented students, the challenges that international students may be going through. We've done a lot of work on those groups, with those groups of students this summer, and so that work will continue as well. We're going to offer some virtual programming support for lots of students in lots of different ways, but especially for our first year students who are taking all their classes online, to provide additional opportunities for students to make connections and create those relationships. RecWell will be offering a number of programs and services. Their spaces will be open this fall on a much limited basis, but in a safe basis. The union will also be open only to our students, faculty, and staff. And again, with high public safety and cleanliness safety protocols being put in place. Finally, quickly, I just want to talk a little bit about accountability. I know there's a lot of worry about that, of what will happen if students or others don't follow these guidelines. We have created a special COVID incident report that will be available on the website, so that if anybody is worried or sees behavior that's not following the public health guidelines, we want those incidents reported. Then the Office of Student Conduct will absolutely be meeting with those students. Faculty will control that work or that space in the classroom. If a student chooses not to wear their mask to class, faculty member can ask that student to leave. If that behavior continues, then that student may not be allowed to continue their in-person classes. They may be moved to all remote classes. And then if behavior still continue to escalate, then to us, the students saying that they're not willing to follow the public health guidelines and to be on this campus. So we're going to take this very, very seriously. We're going to hold students accountable both for their on-campus behavior and in this space, the off-campus behavior. These public guidelines apply to everywhere, both students on campus as well as off campus. So if it's a student organization or just a group of students that are not following those guidelines, then again, that incident report will be available. We will follow up and we will take all of these consequences very, very seriously and hold our students accountable. So I'll just stop there and then be available if there's additional questions or follow up, and turn it back to Lauren.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Okay. Well, I figure we should get right into the questions. So first question will be for you, Chancellor Blank. I've heard this from many different folks, and I'm curious for your take. Why are we reopening now when we shut down in March, when there were fewer cases of COVID reported at that time? What's different now?
It's a good question. It's a serious question. When we shut down in March, we knew nothing about this virus and what we were facing, and we didn't know what steps one needed to take to avoid infection. What we knew is it was dangerous, and that was about it. We now know a whole lot more about the virus, how it manifests itself, what its symptoms are, and we know as well quite a bit more about how we avoid infections. So for instance, if you are masked, if everyone is masked and everyone is at least 6 feet apart, there's very little evidence of viral transmission. That is one reason why we're taking these health protocols so seriously. If you're not masked, if you're standing close together, you are at risk. That type of knowledge is really key. So we're trying to follow the science on this. And, we have a medical advisory group we've been talking with. A number of the infectious disease people have been working with us, the dean of the medical school. And it's that knowledge that we've gained. And the experience, of course, of both on our campus and on other campuses of what's worked and what hasn't worked over the summer, that we are using to put these protocols in place. And I should say, we're not alone in our judgment that we think we can have a fall with some, somewhat de-densified, but with some people back on campus and are, in different ways, our research and educational enterprise operating. Almost all of our peers, certainly our Big 10 peers, our big public peers, are all largely doing somewhat similar things based on the same scientific interpretations.
Small thing I would add. Thank you, Chancellor. One other small thing I would add to that is just that our testing capacity is so wildly different now versus what it was in March when
we were doing no testing. We didn't know what testing we needed to do and how to do it well. Mm-hmm. And we now have a testing regime, which I am very proud of, that a number of people have worked on very hard, and that I think is as good as any of the testing regimes that I know of on most of the campuses that are our peer schools.
So I hope you won't mind if I put you back on the hotspot, Chancellor. It's going to happen whether you mind or not. But one of the questions I've heard a lot, and it's also a good one, is a question about what factors might lead to us changing course, to making tweaks or changes in the middle of the semester. We all saw that in March all across the country. And do we have a backup plan?
Mm-hmm. So, we are going to be tracking a lot of information in real time. And the fact that we're doing much of the testing for our people on campus, as well as exchanging information with Dane County and other testing sites nearby, means that we will know what the incidence of disease on our campus is. And one of the things I really appreciate about the surveillance testing we're doing is we can tell where it's happening. So, if there's a cluster of infections that occur over in some biomedical engineering laboratories, we can work pretty fast to shut that down and try to figure out what's going wrong and what, how do we deal with this? But in that case, you don't have to shut down the library over on the other side of campus, because that doesn't seem to be the problem. What will cause us to shut entirely is obviously an uncontrolled rise in infections that we simply cannot get a handle on and cannot stop. And we will be tracking that on, that's the whole point of our surveillance testing. We will know that, and we'll have to make a call. That said, people often ask me, well, what's the number? What's the metric? And I will say there are a number of metrics, and there's a qualitative as well as a quantitative part of this decision, it's not one number that's going to cause us to shut down or to change our approach. It's a variety of pieces of information that all start coming together that tell us that, we really just can't continue operating the way we are. What is our backup plan? Our backup plan is to basically go to all online instruction, to ask our students to return home if that is possible for them, and complete the semester there. I would very much hope that we are going to be able to maintain some research activity on campus, more so than when we shut down entirely. And I think our research labs and all are a much more controlled environment. So, we'll see what happens. But, we've got some of the best people on this. And as I say, we've got the testing regimes and the health protocols that all the science tells us need to be in place for us to operate safely.
Thank you, Chancellor. Okay, so next question, I'll go to Mark Walters. So question I've heard a lot, we've all heard a lot, thought a lot about. What can staff do if they don't want to come back to physical work on campus?
Well, what they should be doing is having a discussion with their supervisor and talk about options. I mentioned earlier an approach where looking at the circumstances, what kind of options are out there. Also involving the human resource representatives, and if it's a medical related issue, it would be with our disability representatives, and having that discussion, looking at that holistically of the circumstances that the employee has, the concerns that they may have, and see how we can address those concerns. There are a lot of options out there, including looking at various leave activities. We have a robust set of leave options that employees have. We have all that information out on the Smart Restart website that identifies those things. But it really starts with talking with your supervisor and working through those things. Realizing that in some cases, you may feel uncomfortable talking with your supervisor about your circumstance. And that's where we would have human resource representatives and division level disability representatives talking with you about strategies and those types of things. And I mentioned this earlier about really needing to balance those flexibilities, providing flexibilities along with the work that needs to be accomplished on campus. And I will say that we've been using this strategy for the last number of months, and I think in most cases we have been able to find a solution that will work for both the employee and for the particular work unit. And so I would stress that discussion should be occurring first with the supervisor, and really identifying how can we provide that flexibility to employees, how can we dampen or eliminate the concerns that employees have with returning to campus.
Thanks, Mark. So as long as I've got you on the hot seat, another question that we've heard a lot of, especially with recent news around K-12 and online instruction in K-12 at the beginning of the fall. What further flexibilities will be available for things like caregiving, particularly given recent news in K-12 space?
Well, I want to expand on what I was saying before about the flexibility, the individual cases, and having employees work with supervisors, looking at possible options like adjusting schedules so that the parent can work with their children, the virtual learning, adjusting the schedules so that can occur. I think that's one of that's an option that can be pursued. Also, talking with supervisors about if someone has to work on site, people are working on site, the same type of thing, looking at adjusting schedules. I can't say that always can happen, but having that dialogue. Also, there are other leave options out there. With the past stimulus package that was passed, there is the expansion of the Family Medical Leave Act that provides the ability to take leave if you're caring for a child whose school or childcare center has closed. That is an option that's out there for staff to pursue. But I can't stress enough the sitting down, having the discussion, and seeing if we can work out options that will help the parent be successful with the virtual learning of their child, but also figuring out ways that they can also be successful with their roles at the UW.
Great, thank you. This next question's for Jake. So a bunch of questions from faculty, but also from staff, supervisors, etc. How will I know if someone in my work area tests positive?
Thank you. A great question, and one that we all probably are wondering about. So one of the things that's really important is protecting the privacy of those individuals. So that obviously has to be taken into consideration. So as soon as we get a positive test result from our own campus-based testing, one of the things that we will do is contact the divisional disability rep in each unit to make them aware of it, so that they can reach out to the employee and provide any necessary supports, some of which Mark mentioned in his remarks, and make sure that they can be successful, as well as letting the appropriate supervisor know so they can evaluate the circumstances and make any necessary adjustments in that. In addition to that, some of Alan's staff through environmental health and safety will be notified so that they can take any necessary steps to address any maintenance issues that might be appropriate for that. So if and then the other thing to keep in mind is that we have our own contact tracing staff. So if you are, as a part of that case investigation process, if you are identified as a potential close contact person, you will be contacted directly by that person in a very short period of time, and then they will evaluate those individual circumstances to determine if there's any consequence for you or as a result of that potential exposure. In most cases, because of the health protocols that we have in place, the physical distancing and the face covering requirements, it's unlikely that you would be considered a close contact, but we will evaluate each situation individually and make the appropriate steps.
Thanks, Jake. So next up, as long as I got you, we have got a bunch of questions about the information flow and cooperation between Public Health Madison-Dane County and UHS in our own testing efforts. Can you talk about how information would flow back and forth, and will we know if someone goes to the Alliance Center, say, or another local testing site if they've had a positive result?
Thank you for that question. And we've had a very long and successful relationship with the Public Health Department here. And that's only grown stronger in recent months because of all of our combined strategies. So we have actually identified UHS as the employer contact. So that if Public Health Madison gets a positive test report, and as a result of their investigation, they discovered that this person's an employee or a student, that we will be contacted and notified of that so that we can initiate our own campus protocols. So that's an established process that will work very, very smoothly. And at the same time, we also have a responsibility as a provider of tests to share that same information with them, so that if there's any community interaction there, that those appropriate steps can be taking place. So we have a well-established communication and collaboration with the Public Health Department, and I only see that growing stronger.
Great, thank you. So next question, I'll go to Lori Reeser on. Maybe it's a two-parter. What do I do if I see someone who's not wearing a mask? How will we enforce these things? I know it's an area of great concern, and you know, one issue obviously relates to students in their various activities, including in instruction, but then also with staff. The number 2 thing on the survey Mark mentioned before was help enforcing safety protocols with my coworkers.
Yeah, no, thanks, Laura. That's a really important question. As we know, Governor Evers has ordered that everyone in the state of Wisconsin is required to wear a mask while indoors or in close quarters with other people in public. And that includes all of our buildings on the UW campus. And so the only way this is going to work is if we take a community approach to this, which includes all faculty, staff, and students, and any visitors that are on campus as well, that we all must comply with these public health guidelines, which includes physical distancing and wearing a face covering. So, we also ask people to take care of each other and to address people that may not be doing this. I don't know about you, but there unfortunately a few times where I've run out of my house to run to the store. I forgot my mask. Thankfully, I have one in my car, and so I need to go and grab it and put it on. So if you do see somebody, we just ask them that you remind people that people need to wear a mask. And some folks we know also have special circumstances or accommodations where they're not able to do so. But if they don't choose to do that, if they choose to not wear a mask and follow those guidelines, then that's where we need to hold people accountable. And as I mentioned, we'll have this incident report form, especially for students. So to let us know who the student is, what that situation is, so that we can hold people accountable. And that will be the same for our staff and faculty colleagues as well. We're not going to make this if we don't all follow these guidelines together. And that also means holding each other accountable in these spaces as well. So we take this very, very seriously and are asking everybody to do their part, to be thoughtful, to be kind, but to remind people about these guidelines. And this is the expectation and what that means.
Thanks, Lori. That's great. So I will make the awkward move of asking myself a question at this point. We've got lots of questions about the budget and budgetary impacts and financial considerations related to COVID-19 and the campus's response to that. You've probably seen in other venues, we've mentioned the financial impacts to the university could be very significant. Stemming from this, we're not alone in that. That's true all across higher ed and state government and the federal government and in business. Unfortunately, this is a public health crisis that has significant financial ramifications to it. And that's just a reality that we're all dealing with. We've estimated that probably the likely case scenario just through the summer is that the university could lose as much as $150 million. Unfortunately, that projection seems to be holding, and that does seem to be the case. Nearly half of that loss is related to the 2 rounds of state budget lapses that have already hit us. The remainder is affecting basically all of our different revenue streams at the same time. We took a lot of strong actions to help correct that already, ranging from delaying projects, reducing expenses where possible, and also, unfortunately, we had to go to the solution of furloughs for our staff. Those furloughs run through October. Many of our folks had to participate in state work share programs where during the shutdown, there wasn't as much work. There wasn't much work to go around. Fortunately, we were able to leverage federal government support for that. And so the impact to staff was mitigated. In our furlough approach, we also did a progressive furlough where executives took a 15% pay cut. And then on a sliding scale, there were furloughs for other staff with the lowest paid staff receiving the smallest furloughs. I think that shows that we're trying our best in very difficult circumstances, help protect our staff from the impacts of this. Now, part 2 of this question would be, well, are you doing this reopening plan? Are you pursuing the reopening plan on the basis of money? You're only doing this for the money is something I've heard people say. And I'm quick to say that is categorically false. I am the CFO here. This is not about the money. This is about all of our responses have been rooted in public safety and finding ways to continue delivering on our mission that are safe. So that's been first, second, and third in our thinking. The chancellor and the provost have spoken eloquently about that, including today, about the importance of doing some elements of our proposals in person. And that's really the main thing that's driving us. Sort of a final question I would raise on a related point is it possible that we would need to continue furloughs or have additional job actions later in the year? And I would say we have to wait and see. The actions that we took to date were sufficient to help stem the bleeding and get us through to the fall. We're going to have to take stock in October as we get information back in and we see where we're really at financially. So I can't say that we will be totally immune from additional financial impacts as a result of this. Unfortunately, we will have to deal with that together as a community in the months ahead. So moving on, question for you, Chancellor. So Why is it unsafe for us to operate football with the recent announcement from the Big Ten? But we do think that it's safe to try and have this hybrid learning experience.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've been asked it by a number of people in the last day since we announced that the sports season for the fall is canceled. So competition in sports has a number of elements that are completely different from other aspects of our campus. Number one, in most of these competitions, particularly the contact sports, you cannot physically distance and you cannot wear masks and perform at the level of play that the teams want to perform at. That makes it very different from everywhere else on campus where we are enforcing those health protocols and makes it riskier. Number two, when you're scheduling competitions, you need the whole team there in a way you don't on almost any other activity. And if one or two individuals get ill, if they happen to live with others, you take some people out for 2 weeks. It doesn't just throw out your team schedule, it throws out the team schedule for everyone else in the league. And you look at those scheduling problems. It's very hard to imagine getting through a season, unless you can guarantee that all athletes, have no infections and you don't have any of these, the whole team has to cancel. That's a problem and that's going to be hard to do. The third issue is that there is at least anecdotal evidence. There's not strong, gold standard study evidence here, but some anecdotal evidence that suggests we ought to at least be concerned with and look at the effects of COVID on those who engage in extreme exercise. And, we need to do some of those studies. We need to have some of that evidence in hand, but the uncertainty about that adds to it. All three of those things are unique to athletic competition, and they're why we've pulled down the athletic competition issues. They don't affect the other parts of campus in the same ways. And so I really do think that the athletic decision is different in kind.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chancellor. So one of the sad realities of the COVID-19 crisis is that we've seen that it has disparate impacts on different groups. Chancellor, do you want to talk a little bit about how this plan handles the disparate impacts of the COVID crisis?
So, we want to protect all of our employees. And by putting in place these sorts of health protocols, it is designed to do that. That said, we all know what the statistics look like nationally, particularly for African American and Latino communities are being much more affected by, infections, hospitalizations, and deaths. We've been trying to think about that at all the points in time where we're making decisions. As Loren noted earlier, when we put our furloughs in place, we explicitly put in progressive furloughs so that individuals who are in lower paid jobs did not have as much of a financial impact on them as those in higher paid jobs. We all know that our staff of color are more likely to be in those lower paid jobs, and that's a form of trying to protect them. Laurie noted that we've been doing a lot of special outreach to our students of color in particular, who we want to make sure are going to feel safe and supported here on campus. We've really been working with our mental health services to deal with issues. And, given this very lively and unsettled and difficult summer, particularly for many of our African-American students, we're trying to make sure that they are linked up with supportive services where they want to and need to receive them. As we look at our incoming class, we have some big increases in the numbers as we see right now of students of color coming in, and our admissions office has been in very particular contact with that set of students, wanting to make sure that they have the resources and the things that they need to come to campus. And of course, many of those students are in families that are particularly struggling with job loss or other or illness issues, and are at more risk of not showing up on campus than some of our other students. And we're trying to do everything we can to make it possible for them to be here. So, we're thinking about that all through these decisions. And, in addition to the COVID issues, we're not stopping our push on racial justice issues. And, as I've noted, even despite the financial trouble, we're moving forward with our hiring opportunities aimed at underrepresented groups. This next semester, we're moving forward with additional training. And I will say, I think we have an opportunity. I'll say this to everyone on campus, particularly white faculty and staff. If this summer does not persuade people, we all need to spend more time really thinking and reflecting on these issues and how they need to affect our behavior. And we're going to put some opportunities out there for people to get together in groups, virtually, if they, do some reading and discussion, particularly aimed at our white faculty and staff, saying, this is a moment, take advantage of it, do some self-education and some conversation.
Super important. Thank you, Chancellor. So we only probably have time for a couple of additional questions. We got a few here that have come in a lot on the inbox, and it'd be great to be able to address. This first one for you, Jake. So why aren't we requiring all employees and students to take a test before returning to campus?
Thank you, Laurent. That's a question we get frequently as well. And we certainly have studied that issue very, very carefully, consulted with the health experts, looked at the guidance from the CDC and other bodies. And honestly, there's not strong evidence to support that that's would be an effective strategy. What we do know is that making sure that we have ready access to the testing that for all of our community, and that's why we've set up these on-campus testing sites and these other strategies. We know that because you may have got tested before you came to campus doesn't mean that you weren't necessarily at some level of risk when you're returning back to campus. So we will make sure that we test those folks that are coming to our residence halls. Our faculty and staff, actually, in particular, those are here in the community, have access to testing right now, and certainly we would welcome them taking advantage of that. We're looking at, we're continuing to look at additional testing strategies to expand that capacity, but we feel very strongly that the robust access to testing really will be the most meaningful for the work that we do. And we have communicated to our students, encourage them to get tested before they come, if it's available to them. It's not always going to be available. And what's also important is that they take the steps to limit their exposure before returning to campus as well.
Thanks, Jake. Alan, quick one for you, I hope. Had a lot of questions about elevators and how we'll deal with elevators in different campus buildings, given that they're small and cramped. How are we going to handle that?
So there's a couple things we're balancing here. Obviously, we're not going to want to put 8 or 10 people in elevators anymore, but we also need to balance that out with, we don't want 30 people waiting in the elevator lobby, standing there for a long period of time. So the trade-off is most elevator rides, and we have over 450 elevators on campus, are anywhere from 6 to 8 to even 3 floors. So you're not in the elevator a long time. We're going to set capacities based on the size of the elevators. Everybody's going to wear a mask. Most of the larger elevators will put 5 people in them. But the smaller elevators, we can put 2. We're encouraging people mostly to take the stairs. So this is a fitness opportunity for everyone as well as a public health opportunity. But if you do need to take the elevator or want to take the elevator, we're going to try and set those capacities up, encourage people to take the stairs. But if you need to take them, you're usually only in the elevator for a minute or two, and those capacities are set to try and keep people moving. Once again, we don't want to create clogs, and an elevator lobby full is just as bad and maybe worse than 2 to 5 people in an elevator.
Thanks, Alan. Chancellor, I'm going to ask you another one. Talk to us quickly about meeting with governance. How have we been doing that, and might we think about doing that more given the gravity of the situation?
So we've been linking up with governance very, very closely. And as you know, our governance groups have representatives in every single unit on campus. That is why they represent campus rather broadly. My chief of staff has been meeting with the leaders of the governance groups twice a week, answering their questions, getting their concerns, tying them in with what we're doing, and asking them to communicate back to their groups whenever there's something that they think needs to be communicated back. They've been really important partners. I, the provost, Laurent, others have been meeting with the executive committees of those groups and communicating with them in various ways. So, we've really tried to keep governance very close at hand, let them know what we're doing and why we're doing it, and try to make sure that we have their input as fully as possible.
Okay, so we're going a little bit over, but one other important health question that's come up a lot. Testing is all well and good. A great testing strategy is well and good, but it only works so well without contact tracing. How will we be handling contact tracing in the fall, Jake?
Yeah. And one of the things that the campus has done is invested early in making sure that we have a robust level of contact tracing capacity. So we literally have dozens of staff that we have onboarded and continue to do that as we prepare to respond with any positive tests that we get. Many of them have been working throughout the summer, getting trained and working in collaboration with the public health department. It's our goal to reach out as soon as we get those test results and identify what potential exposure is there. What's also important is that we continue to follow those physical distancing guidelines and those face covering guidelines. That will greatly diminish or minimize the potential that somebody could be considered a close contact. So again, it's important that we reinforce those protocols, but the contact tracing is there and it will be responsive to our particular campus situations so that we can identify somebody who might be considered a close contact and support them appropriately through the variety of resources that we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake. Okay, so I think we're going to have to leave it there for today. I would just like to thank all of you sincerely for joining us today, for your engagement, for your good thinking, your good questions. I know we didn't get to all of them today, but we're doing this again next week. And we will be posting more resources, FAQs on the website. I know that I speak for Chancellor Blank and my other colleagues when I say we completely understand the level of concern and anxiety out there right now. So little seems certain in the world at the moment. But we're a community, we're a strong community. We're blessed to have resources that enable us to attack this problem in the best way possible based on science and learning and good thinking and hard work. You're all a big part of that. We thank you. We couldn't do it without you. We need your help. Thanks for everything. We're going to stay close and keep talking. And we will see some of you back here on the campus in the fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Wisconsin.